Hello, my fellow book lovers. September has ended. We are finally into the cozy sweater season and British Columbia has turned absolutely beautiful. Another wonderful thing happened this month. My baby's now 6 months old and I think he's teething. So exciting times and testing times. He loves books too, mine more than his own. The rustling of paper makes him very curious. September was wonderful in terms of the books I had a chance to read. I have one DNF, but the others were pretty solid. I received a comment on one of my videos about how I should do detailed reviews of the books I read, so I'm going to try and give you as much detail as I can without spoilers in the monthly wrap-ups. Let's get into the books I read this month, and I know looking at the title of the video, some of you might be looking for my thoughts on my Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I will talk about it right at the end, so if you just want to hear my thoughts on that, you can skip to the last chapter of the video. Otherwise, let's start by talking about Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I went into this book with zero expectations because I don't like most stories about romantic love. I wanted to listen to the book rather than read it because it is narrated by Meryl Streep. Lara, a mom to three daughters Emily, Nell, and Maisie, tells them the story of her romance with the famous actor Peter Duke and his short-lived acting career in the 80s while they were picking cherries on their farm in northern Michigan during the pandemic. I thought this book would be a romance where a girl is love-struck and charmed by a handsome actor and is looking back at the glory days of her youth and stardom. It would have butterflies and passionate kisses, but how wrong was I? This book is so simple yet so complex, so beautiful yet so heartbreaking. By the time I was done with it, my heart was shattered into two pieces with grief, reminding me how love can make us do impossibly painful things. Lara takes her daughters back to the days when she was a young actress who got a chance to act besides Peter Duke in a play Our Town. She falls in love with him and the story goes on from there. She tells her daughters how she met him, how their relationship and her acting career ended, and how she met her husband and their father. The girls are quite interested in the story as Peter is now a famous actor. This is not a simple love story because the characters are not simple, making the story full of unexpected twists and turns. Duke is a talented actor, eccentric, narcissistic yet charming, magnetic. There's so many layers to him, layers that are slowly peeled over 300 pages by the writer. As the story unfolds, there are many anxious moments for the reader. At many points, it's like reading a murder mystery. Lara's character is not of the typical woman in love. She is mature, sensitive. She knows how to carry on even when her relationship with Duke didn't work out, making her my personal hero. She has her moments of weakness, and acknowledgement of those weaknesses, her capacity to understand others and herself is so impressive and lovable. Years later, when she's narrating the story to her girls, she's selecting what parts of the story to share with them, carefully sifting what they need to know about her life and what she needs to keep to herself. Her character was wise in her 20s and wiser in her 50s. There are simple elements of friendship, betrayal, pain, deceit, and hope like all love stories, but like I said earlier, the way these elements are presented in this story is not ordinary. You will also learn a lot about cherries. The present-day storyline of the book is also interesting and effortless. It goes over the lives of the three daughters and what is happening on the farm. The first-person narrative and dialogue works in the book, but when Meryl Streep narrates it in the audiobook, it becomes magic. It does start a little slow and the writer takes a long time before the twists and turns start appearing, but please keep going and it will surprise you. A 5-star book from me. Every Rising Sun by Jamila Ahmad. This book is based in the 12th century Persia where the Malik of Kirman, Shahryar, finds out about his wife Fatene's adultery through an anonymous letter written to him by his vizier's daughter Shahrazadeh. Malik, angry in his betrayal, beheads Fatene and starts taking a new wife every day only to kill her after the wedding night. After the death of 3 innocent brides, Shahrazadeh offers to marry him. She entices him with her storytelling skills, thus averting death for 1001 nights. Every night she tells him a story and leaves it incomplete and continues it the next night. This book is a take on the Arabian Nights, which is the original collection of these stories told by her. In this book, you will get to know the story of Shahrazadeh, her perspective, her journey, and her feelings while she lived under the threat of being killed every night. The book, written in first-person voice, offers the main story and the folk stories told by the main character. The author has a clear motive to make Shahrazadeh a heroine who walked into the lion's den by offering herself to Shahryar in marriage for the greater good of her people. But I'm going to take away a few brownie points from her. First, she was the reason why he found out about his first wife's adultery in the form of common gossip. He knew that the news of her adultery wasn't a secret, forcing him to punish her severely. Shahrazadeh was the reason why the Malik murdered his wife in the first place, even when he could have forgiven her. Second, Shahrazadeh had a few things going for her. Father was the Malik's vizier, whom he deeply respected and loved like his own father. The same vizier who asked him to not treat his daughter the way he treated his other wives. Third, Malik Shahryar knew her since she was a child and had a natural soft spot for her, which was a huge advantage that she had over his other wives who were unknown to him. Shahrazada was no saint herself. She secretly loved the Malik, but after her wedding to him, did not commit herself to him fully. Her first-person voice was constantly pointing out her own imperfections, making me not side or sympathize with her or regard her as a great heroine. I loved the character of Shahrazade's sister Dunyazade. She was a brave girl, a good daughter, and a loyal sister, and for me, she was the true heroine of the book. She had the power to sacrifice herself for the good of the others in the real sense, just like her father, the vizier, who was another lovable character. A wise single dad who gave his daughters everything he could. The book is an ode to diversity, and culturally, it is very rich. The foods, the clothes, the poetry that came out of that part of the world is a great contribution, and this book is a reminder of that. The foods mentioned took me back to the streets of Delhi, where you can find the dishes mentioned, the kebabs and pulaus in different variations. The author was successful in making the reader look at the power that the ruling class of women yielded through the political council and maintaining diplomatic relationships. She has proven that Muslim women of that era weren't oppressed or voiceless as many might think so. The research behind this book is detailed and strong. The writer has set to research for 14 years before she penned this book. Structurally, the book is haphazard. There is no certain switch from Shahrazade's story to the folktales. Sometimes one has to wait for really long before a story appears. The chapters where the author has written about war need concentration. It is difficult to visualize a battlefield with so many moving pieces. It's easy to get lost in the words when warfare is being described if you're reading fast or skimming. I was looking for more tales from the Arabian Nights but didn't get that many in this book, so I've decided to pick up another book about the Arabian Nights. Overall, I love this book. It was a wonderful read with great insights into the history and culture of the time. The characters are layered and multidimensional, and the story is gripping. 3 stars from me. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This book came so highly rated. The first 10 pages were so good. Glennon Doyle starts by talking about how women are conditioned to talk and behave a certain way through advertising, religion, therapy, education, everything. She started strong and started telling the story of her life about how a Christian mommy of 3 claimed her life and became completely honest with herself when her husband cheated on her and accepted the fact that she likes women and met her current life partner. But the book went downhill from there. It seemed like a woman with low self-esteem whose problems weren't that big and unsolvable was ranting about her life. The circumstances and feelings which she was explaining were unauthentic. She even confessed to reverse writing her memoir. DNF and set it down on page 58. Unfortunately, I did not like this book. The next book I read, or should I say heard, this month is Mexican Gothic. I borrow books from my local library all the time. This book is highly praised and I thought it's 11 hours of narration. Let's get into it this month. I finished reading the book yesterday and I'm wondering why it is such a popular read. The story starts when Naomi Taboada, daughter of a rich businessman and a fashionable socialite, gets called home from a party by her dad. He receives a letter from Naomi's cousin Catalina, who believes that her English husband Virgin Doyle is trying to poison her and she can hear voices from the walls of their house. Naomi is asked to go to the Doyle home, high place, and figure out what is wrong with Catalina and find her the right medical help and save the family name from scandal. The storyline is so promising, but the book is rather disappointing. Naomi exhausted me in the first 250 pages, doing nothing meaningful except dreaming strange sexual dreams and establishing that the house was scary, dark, damp, rotten, was always surrounded by mist and had no source of light but oil lamps. The build-up of the story kept going on and on for a really long time, making me lose interest. There were no real conversations between the 2 cousins and the Doyle family was extremely rude to Naomi, yet she didn't think about sending her father one letter about their misbehavior and seeking help. Instead, she just sat in the Doyle house, drinking wine that she hated and talking with Doyle's younger son Francis. The typical forbidden romance trope where she gets entangled with Catalina's husband sexually against her good sense was another put-off for me. By the middle of the book, I was praying that whatever was haunting the house and making the Doyle family look so suspicious is worth all the time I spent reading the first 200 pages. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. For all the build-up, the cause behind Catalina's sickness lacked sense. Plus, everything is packed in the last 50 pages, where things are unfolding at a fast pace. The book goes from 0 to 100 in the last part. Naomi's transformation from a flirtatious party-going socialite to an evil-fighting heroine is unconvincing. I could never guess she had it in her. Her character didn't strike a chord with me. Some of the other characters are rather hateful and disgusting, which they are meant to be. The negative characters are written quite well, though the relationships between the characters are not convincing. The cousins Naomi and Catalina, who didn't even talk to each other through the first 200 pages, emerge as a heroic duo all of a sudden. They work in perfect unity without ever discussing anything worthwhile. Maybe they had a telepathic bond that wasn't mentioned. The romance between Francis and Naomi is strong, but I'm not sure when it became so strong, when she spent most of the time dreaming about Virgil and suspecting Francis's intentions. For me, the book didn't do justice to its basic storyline. Hence, sadly, only 2 stars. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book has affected me so much. Before I tell you what it is about, I want to tell you it has detailed mentions of child sex abuse and pedophilia. Please feel free to skip or stop watching if these subjects are possible triggers for you. This book is a story of a 15-year-old girl, Vanessa, who's in a relationship with her 42-year-old English teacher, Jacob Strain. Now, Jacob Strain is a teacher straight out of a parent's nightmare. He's a groomer. Grooming is when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. He grooms a young, impressionable Vanessa and starts abusing her at the age of 15 years old. He has her convinced that he's in love with her and what he's doing to her is out of his affection. He has her completely brainwashed. The relationship she has with him absolutely ruins her life, and years later she still believes that it was consensual while it was abuse. He's an ugly, hideous person inside out who manipulates a child and keeps justifying how he always asked for consent. How can consent even be valid here? She was 15. This book is a psychological thriller, but it is dark, disturbing, very dark and very disturbing. There's no way it won't shake you till your core. It will rip your heart out, especially if you're a parent. You will have some feelings, especially those of anger, of disgust, of helplessness, of despair, wondering why such people exist. The book explains so much about abuse. It's also educational. It uncovers how victims are made to think they are making decisions and have complete control in a relationship with their abuser. Vanessa, at the age of 32, is remembering things because she's now a grown-up and is struggling with shame, blaming herself because she was so cleverly manipulated. The book hit me hard. Such subjects always do, because I'm a mom and it is such a scary world. The book references the Me Too movement and justifies and answers many questions that people ask the victims then. Like, why did she not speak up when it was happening? How can you tell the difference between abuse and a consensual relationship? Vanessa's story is tough to ingest, but what's tougher is a chapter near the end where she starts working in the Office of Social Services and reads files of child abuse. Babies being dipped in bleach and kids found caked in human feces. I couldn't go on from there. I had to stop for a day. I was so anxious. I felt so disturbed. Though the book was controversial because it was fiction, and at the time of its release in 2020, women were sharing their real stories and not getting the same exposure that the writer was getting. But this is a book that deserved to be published. The writer researched for 18 years and handled this topic very well. The chapter flips between Vanessa's current day life and the time when she was being abused, drawing a parallel, showing the reader how the incidents of the past had affected her present. She also brings to light how institutions like Vanessa's boarding in Maine, the Browick School, deny responsibility while they facilitate an environment and culture of abuse by ignoring the signs and empowering the abuser to save their own reputation. Vanessa deserves the reader's sympathy. Her teacher infuriated me and I felt her mother's helplessness. A proof of characters well written. This book is remarkable, but be prepared to be shocked, pained, and disturbed while reading it. A 5-star book. Alright then, book lovers, this is the end of another video. These are all the books I've read in September. I will see you in the next one, so subscribe if you want to see and hear me talk about books, and tell me what you are reading. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them. I would love to hear your opinion. See you in the next one. Until then, keep reading.